Hey everyone, I wanted to talk a little bit about nutritional tips for maximizing muscle growth. So people who are really focusing on maximizing muscle hypertrophy through their training and their nutritional goals, there's certain things that you can do to really set yourself up to maximize your training and to maximize your adaptations. In this case, it would be, again, muscle growth. So hands down, the most important thing to do from a nutritional standpoint is going to be eating enough. Eating enough calories, providing your body with enough energy to A, sustain the level of training that you're doing, and then B, providing enough energy to actually assimilate additional bodily protein. So that's an anabolic process, that's an energy demanding process, so you have to eat enough to sustain the actual building of these contractile proteins to put on new lean body mass. It's not the only way, but generally that's the best way to do it if you're trying to maximize muscle growth. So again, the first thing that you can do and the most important thing to do is just to make sure you're getting enough calories in on a daily basis. Now there's a lot of ways to go about identifying what this number looks like. All kinds of different laboratory-based testing that we can do. Sometimes it requires expensive equipment, costs associated with it, all that. If you're interested in that, come find me. We'll definitely hook you up with that. But just a rough, easy way to kind of guesstimate how many calories this is going to equate to is just to take your body weight in pounds and multiply it by about 17. So I have an example up here of someone who weighs about 215 pounds. If they were to multiply that by 17 calories per pound of body weight, that would give them a total daily requirement of about 3,655 calories per day, kind of give or take. So that, again, is kind of a rough way to estimate what that number would look like and be at. It's not the most exact. There very well could be some fluctuation there. But again, this is just kind of a quick, easy way to estimate what that number probably looks like. So again, if you want to get more specific, come find me. We'll hook you up with that. Otherwise, use something like this. You may want to adjust it a little bit based on training. So on off days, you might not need quite that much, but I wouldn't deviate too much from what that number looks like on a daily basis, especially if you're training 4 to 6 days a week. So once we've kind of established total caloric requirements, then we can get into your different macronutrient needs. Those being protein, fat, and carbohydrates. So protein is usually heavily emphasized as well if the goal is to put on lean body mass, because lean body mass is made up of protein. So we have to, again, make sure we're eating enough of those daily proteins to facilitate any kind of substantial increase in muscle growth over time. So the general recommendation for those interested in maximizing muscle growth would be to consume anywhere from about 0.7 to 0.9 grams per pound of body weight, so grams of protein per pound of body weight, or for those that have seen this based on kilograms of body weight, that number comes out to be about 1.6 to 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. Now you certainly can go above and beyond that. The research in this area is somewhat mixed. Sometimes going slightly above 2 grams per kilogram of body weight, could be advantageous, but I don't know if it's necessarily needed, and I don't know if you're going to get that much additional benefit out of doing so. In my opinion, that's kind of the point where it crosses into being a bit more of a struggle to actually get that much daily protein in, where you're going to have to probably rely more on protein shakes and bars and things like that, and you almost get to the point where you're kind of forcing the protein a little bit, and to be honest, it just takes some of the fun enjoyment out of eating. So again, I don't know if you necessarily need to go drastically above and beyond that. So if we play out the math here and look at what that is going to equate to, again, for a 215 pound individual, if we multiply that by 0.7 to 0.9 grams per pound, that will be somewhere in the range of 156 to 194 grams of protein per day. And something that I should have mentioned earlier with calories, you never really have to hit this number dead on. There are so many rooms of or sources of error and areas where the numbers are never going to come out to be perfect. Even our estimations aren't exact. So don't stress yourself out too much by trying to hit these numbers dead on. Just be somewhere in that range on a consistent basis. Consistency is going to be key here with not only calories, but all the different macronutrients. Next, we need to establish fat recommendations. Generally, the best way to go about this is just to take about 30% of your total calorie needs, and that will kind of give you a rough idea of how much fat you should be consuming on a daily basis. So if we take our total calorie needs that we've calculated kind of in the first step and start with our 3,655 calories, multiply that by 30%, that gives us about a little over 1,000 calories from fat. And then if we're going to convert this to an actual gram amount, that would be about 122 grams of fat per day. That would kind of be a target value for us to hit, again, on a fairly consistent basis. Some people want to establish carbohydrates after protein, others establish fat. Again, it doesn't really matter. It should come out fairly the same no matter which way you're going about it. So last would be establishing, again, total daily carbohydrates, and I think this is one where you can play around with it the most, especially with what type of training or your training frequency you happen to be doing within your program. So with carbohydrates, you can just take the leftover calories after you've calculated protein and fat requirements, or you can use, again, kind of a rough estimation of about 1.3 grams per pound of body weight, or 3 grams per kilogram of body weight, depending on which type of an equation you want to use. So for a 215-pound individual, that'll again come out to be about 290, or right around 300 grams of carbohydrates per day. So if you're finding yourself really tired and fatigued, and you're really training at a high level, high training frequency, you certainly can increase this number a little bit, and then vice versa. If it's an off day, or you're not actively training as frequently or with as high of a training volume, this is where I would kind of reduce your calories, is within this category. And just kind of think of carbohydrates as your fuel. So if you're not doing anything on any particular day, you don't need as much fuel, and vice versa. Whereas proteins and fats, we really need much more on a continual basis because they're providing a lot more structural support for actually building up that lean body tissue that we need. And like I said earlier, consistency is really going to be key here. That's the most important thing to focus on, and making sure that you're doing on a continual basis. If you don't hit these numbers exactly every day, again, that's fine. Just don't deviate too drastically, and just try to come back on track over and over again as consistently as you can. That's really going to be the key, and that's what will determine how successful you are in the end. All right, so just a couple other tips for meal frequency issues. Generally, I recommend to try to get about 20 to 40 grams of protein in each meal. These can be spaced apart really however you need to in order to fit your lifestyle. I would try to aim for about getting some kind of protein in every 4 to 6 hours if you're really trying to maximize recovery and build muscle as much as you can. I would also recommend getting some type of post-workout snack or protein source in, again, about an hour to 2 hours post-workout if you can as well. And then even adding some of this protein in before bedtime can help also. So getting some of that in right before bed. And just a side note, you always want to make sure you're getting enough sleep. That's a vital part of recovery, and again, building lean body mass to really optimize the recovery and hormone process. So try to get about 7 to 8 hours of sleep per night if you can. So there's also some key supplements that can help with this process. They're certainly not needed, but the research is pretty supportive on at least the first one in terms of its ability to maximize muscle growth and training adaptations, and really helping to facilitate your training in the first place, and that would be creatine. So creatine is hands down the most effective supplement that we have in terms of how it can benefit the muscle building process. Other honorable mentions, these can certainly help, but I don't think they're going to have as drastic of an effect as we see with creatine, and a lot of these you can address kind of within the diet. So fish oil can definitely be beneficial for recovery and helping minimize muscle damage, maximizing muscle growth. Beta-alanine can help kind of build up your training tolerance. It will help you better tolerate high intensity training or high volume training, as it helps increase the buffering capacity of skeletal muscle. Caffeine is one where it's not really going to help you build muscle mass, but it can help provide additional energy, increase alertness, minimize fatigue and things like that for training. So that could be something to look at adding into the program. And branched chain amino acids, again, if you're getting enough protein in throughout the day, they're really not going to offer any additional benefit. You can try implementing them pre, during, and post workouts to just provide a more convenient source of some of the essential amino acids, but they're certainly not going to work miracles and aren't going to be able to overcompensate if you're deficient in all the other areas that we've covered today. In terms of training tips, this is certainly worthy of its own topic, and we'll cover it in another video, but really maximizing training volume and focusing on that variable training is going to be the most important for maximizing muscle growth. So again, kind of our bodybuilding type philosophy here, where we're going to be just doing a lot of volume. So that means higher training frequencies, that means hitting muscle groups at least twice per week, and then utilizing set rep schemes of kind of 4x10, 4x15, somewhere in those ranges. And again, we can cover this a lot more extensively in another video. So those are just kind of a brief overview of a lot of the nutritional tips that I recommend to people for those interested in maximizing muscle growth.